Hello viewers, good to have you today for our session on likely JAMB questions on this subject, government. Please sit up, follow up with us, and let's look at it together. The first past the post system of voting is also referred to as, from the word first past the post, simply means the winners takes all. The winners takes all. And that is under electoral system. So the answer here is simple majority system. In a simple majority system, which whoever candidate that secure the highest vote cast is declared the winner. So option B is the correct answer. A community that cooperates and harnesses its resources together is said to be practicing capitalism, communism, communalism, socialism. If you have gone through a session of Karl Marx mode of production, in one of our earliest videos, we did this Karl Marx mode of production, where it discussed the evolution of a society from communalism to feudalism to capitalism to socialism, and of course finally it said communism. Okay, so the beginning of every society, according to him, is communal, togetherness, and necessary resources together, oneness, collectiveness. So the correct answer to this question is option C, communalism. The African leaders formally marked the end of organization of OAU and replaced it with AU when 04, 06, 02, 100. The answer was 2002, 8th July. That is when OAU gave way to AU. So now we have African Union instead of the old OAU. Okay? A permanent structure that facilitates continuity in governance is a permanent structure. In other words, irrespective of government coming and going, military, civilian, good or bad, which structure of government is permanent in such a way to maintain the stability of governance? Military, public operation, judiciary, civil service. The answer is what? The civil service. The civil service are the executors of government programs, government policies. So they are always there to serve. They enjoy continuity of service, long term of service. So irrespective of government that comes or leaves, the civil service is there to serve. All right? Option D is the correct answer. The two constitutions that provided for the election of 4 legislative members were, well, if I've gone through a class of what they call constitutionalism, where we discuss the evolution of constitutions, starting with that of 1922, which was the first constitution in the history of Nigeria, and that moved to 46, and then you have 51, you have 54, you have 1960, right? Very well. Pre-independent, okay? 22 was given to us by Clifford, all right? 46 was by Arthur Richard, 51 was by John Macpherson, 54 was by Oliver Littington, of course, 60 was that of James Robertson, okay? The first one, 22 by Clifford introduced what they call elective principle. Elective principle. What is elective principle? Elective principle are the creation of 4 people to be elected into the Legislative Council in ratio 3 to 1. 3 from Lagos, one from Calabar, because Calabar was capital headquarter of the Eastern region at that time, okay, or Southern Pretoria at that time. All right. So these 4 people to be elected are known as what? Elective principle, introduced by Clifford. And this principle, and there were conditions for this elective principle for you to be elected among these 4. One, your annual income then must be £100, and even this was still very high for people, equivalent of what, 200 naira. Okay, you must be a male, that's male suffrage. You must have stayed in Nigeria for 1 year, all right, and it's limited to Lagos and Calabar. So these were the conditions. So when Richard came and introduced his own constitution in 1946, Otto Richard, he reduced this £100 to what? To £50. They're just about equivalent about 100 naira. You can know what they're selling pound today. A pound is between 1,900 and 2,000 naira for £1. But at that time, for just a pound was, you can see how much it is, the ratio here. Okay? Very well, just like 2 naira, thereabout. So he reduced it to 50 so as to accommodate more people to be involved in the process of political participation. So the answer here is anyone that mentioned Clifford and Richard. Option C is the most correct answer. Okay? McPherson actually put an end to elective principle before people to be elected. Okay? The next question. One of the functions of public corporation is, what is public corporation? Public corporation are government business. Government-owned businesses. Why are government involved in business? So as to provide welfare services. Welfare services, not actually to make profit, but to render or provide what? Welfare services unto the people. Okay? So the major function of public corporation is what? You go through it. The answer is what? Provide essential services. That's option D. Provide essential services. Okay? The next question. The appointment of qualified personnel into any federal establishment, such as minister, were to reflect the principle of federal character, federal commission, allocation, resources. The answer is federal character. Federal character is a principle that was introduced to complement our federal system of government, our federation, our federalism. Federal character, such a way that when appointment is being made, it reflects the diversity of Nigeria. For instance, for the president to appoint ministers, he must appoint at least one person from the 36 states of the federation. Okay? So, likewise, when it comes to chairman of public corporations, that's for status. Likewise, talking about ambassadors, ambassadorial nominees, and what have you, the president must reflect federal character to show that there is diversity in Nigeria and different groups who are being represented in our appointments. Option A is the correct answer. The pioneer president of Action Group was Action Group as a party was created from a cultural group called Egbe Omo Oduduwa, I think in the early 1950s, between 51 and 53. And Awolowo was one that championed the creation of Action Group. Okay? So of course, you should expect that to become the president of Action Group. He was ably assisted by S.L. Akitola at that time. So, Obafemi Awolowo, Action Group. Okay. Nigeria was a member of Arab League, EC, NATO, OPEC. Nigeria could not be a member of Arab League because we are not in the Middle East and we are not an Arab country. Alright? We can't be a member of EC. Why? EC is the Eastern African Cooperation. We are not in East Africa, we are West Africa. We would not be a member of NATO, not Atlantic Organization, headed by US. Those are the powerful US allied. We are not part of US allied. But I'm surprised why the JAMB has to use the word was. It should have been is because we are still a member. Nigeria is a member, was a member, is still a member of what? OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Country, OPEC. Option D is the most correct answer. The Nigerian Supreme Court became the highest court of appeal in, now, it is instructive for you to understand at this point that the Supreme Court of Nigeria was created in 1954. Created in 1954 under Littleton Constitution, 54. under the Tintin Constitution. But when it was created, it was called the highest court. The decision of Supreme Court then was subjected to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in England, because we're under colonization that time. Okay? As in 1954. But Supreme Court eventually became the most and highest court of appeal in Nigeria, final court, in 1963, under the Republican Constitution of Nnamdi Azikiwe and Tafawa Balewa. Okay, so that is option D, 1963 Constitution. The implication is that even as 1961 got independent, Supreme Court was still not the highest court. Because even as independent, our head of state was still the Queen of England as at that time. Until we became Republic, in 1963, that we changed that title, and our head of state is no longer the Queen, but Nnamdi Azikiwe. So Azikiwe actually became the first president of Nigeria in 1963, not in 1960. Because between 60 and 63, he was not a president. He was what? A governor general. The governor general is just a representative of the Queen in Nigeria. Okay, as head of state. The next question. Which of the following is a fundamental principle of democratic governance? Which of these can you say enhance or a condition for democracy? Centralized decision-making, all decision coming from the center as we have in Nigeria? No. Censorship of the media, not giving press freedom, no freedom of the press. Citizen participation, yes, in the process of decision-making. Authoritarianism, that is off track. That's anti-democracy. So the correct answer is option C. The citizen should be part of the process of making decisions and policies in a state. And that's what we call democracy. One way or the other, either through their representative or through other forms that government can involve the people and engage them to participate in decision-making of the country. All right? The next one. Which of the following is not a source of public opinion polls, academic journals, social media? You can say academic journal is limited to academics, not to everyone. All right? So it's the odd one out here. So option B is the correct answer. Okay. In the parliamentary system of government, the head of government is typically, we did a teaching on the system of government in one of our last videos. Please just check out the system of government, which we did an explanation on this. And you were told that when we talk about presidential and parliamentary system of government, or also known as what? Cabinet system of government, right? We said in the presidential system of government, we have one office, we have one person as a leader. This person is both the head of state as well as the head of government. So we call him what? Executive president. The first person to do that in Nigeria was Alhaji Shehu Shagari in 1983, and the second person was Olusegun Obasanjo in 1999. And since that time, we'll be having an executive president to date. Are you with me? Very well. But for parliamentary system of government, in that video, if you check it up on our archive on this platform, I explained to you that in the parliamentary system of government, instead of one seat, we have two seats. Instead of one person, we have two persons sitting on these two seats. And the first person is called the head of state. The second person is called head of government. The head of state is a ceremonial president, while the head of government is the prime minister. Have you had this argument before in Nigeria? Yes. That was in the First Republic between 1960 and 66, when Azikiwe was the ceremonial president, Balewa was the prime minister. So, in the parliamentary system of government, this one, the head of government is typically what? Elected by the people, leader of the majority in the party, appointed by judiciary, chosen by the head of state. The answer is what? The leader of the majority party in the legislature. It's actually appointed by the legislature. That's why in the legislature we have what we call fusion of power. Fusion, instead of separation of power, we have opposite, fusion of power between the legislature and the executive. Why? The prime minister, who is head of government, the head of the executive, is a member of the legislature. And all his ministers, it was advised to appoint them from where? From legislature. So they are both executive as well as legislature, that's fusion of power. So he's the majority leader in the House. Option B is the most correct answer. I hope you're enjoying value. You gain value for this class. Please subscribe to the channel and of course share the link with your friends so that you can also learn from this. Okay. Now, the next question. The policy of indigenization was introduced under the regime of, I think it was Yakubu Gowon, Obasanjo, Ibrahim Babangida, Sani Abacha. I think so Yakubu Gowon.
Get the cheapest science materials from allschoollabs.com.
Okay. Indigenization policy has to do with involving Nigerians in industries operating in Nigeria, not leaving the control of industrialization in the hand of foreigners. Okay, involving Nigeria. Who is the current chairperson of ECOWAS? I think this question is outdated. That was at that time when the person was asked. I think it was Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was the chairperson for 2 occasions, for the first 2 years in office. Okay, I think another person has taken over now. Is it Burkina Faso, one of those countries, head of state? There's not, but none of this anyway. So this question is already obsolete, outdated. Okay, but there's no answer there. The constitutional amendment process in Nigeria requires the approval. For you to amend, the word amend means to change. Amend means to change. Amendment means to change. To change any part of the Nigerian constitution, you must do that through the National Assembly. Okay? And you know that we're operating a written and rigid constitution, which makes it what? To be difficult to change. So the Nigerian constitution is difficult to change. Why? To change any part of the Nigerian constitution, we need 2/3 majority of the National Assembly. 2/3 majority of the National Assembly and 2/3 of the State House of Assembly in the 36 states. In other words, what is 2/3 of 36? 24. 24 House of Assembly, State House of Assembly in Nigeria must support any change in the Nigerian constitution. Likewise, 2/3 of the National Assembly. So you can see it's very difficult. It can be changed, but it's cumbersome. The process is difficult to change the Nigerian constitution. So we change it. INEC change constitution. INEC is only to conduct free and fair election. National Assembly, the president has no singular power to change constitution. They can only propose a change, and they will submit such proposal to the National Assembly to treat it. The Supreme Court, no. So the answer is option B. The next question. During the Cold War, Nigeria's foreign policy was characterized. What is my Cold War? Cold War was the time within the United Nations organization, where there is disagreement in policy decision, policy making, and policy direction within the United Nations, particularly between the 2 major blocs, the Warsaw and the NATO bloc. All right? The Warsaw bloc was led by USSR, who believe in socialist, a socialist country, while the NATO part was led by USA, who are the capitalist nation. So they have their allied are their supporters. All right? And I think that Cold War is still ongoing till now. Okay. You can imagine the war between Russia and Ukraine. It was unnecessary. What was the major cause of that war? Because Ukraine, and who was supposed to be part of the allied of Warsaw, want to go and join NATO, as they were invited by US. And Russia don't want that to happen. Okay? And that's part of what led to what? That unwarranted war between Russia and Ukraine. And it's still on the ground, and many lives and properties have been destroyed and damaged. So the Cold War, during that Cold War, the third world nations, the developing countries, developing countries, they decided that they are not going to support either of the group. They will not support Warsaw, they will not support NATO. They are going to stand aloof, they are going to stand on their own, like a balancer. So and that's what they call non-alignment movements. They are non-aligned, we are not supporting either of the group. They are neutral during the Cold War. The Cold War was not actually shooting of ammunitions or anything. It was just tensions, disagreement on policy direction, policy decisions, and what have you. Okay? Between the 2 blocks. They call them blocks, the 2 blocks. Okay? Very well. So non-aligned, neutrality and non-aligned. Option B is the most correct answer. Right?
Run quick tests and analysis. Visit analysis.africa.
Which of the following documents granted Nigeria its independence? Of course, it is option C, the Nigeria Independence Act, which was released It was as a result of 1958 and 1959 London conferences. Those are these conferences that they agree that Nigeria will become independent by 1960, October 1st. And that constitution was promulgated. And that constitution being promulgated became an act, a law. But that constitution recognized that the Queen of England still remained the head of state. And Azikiwe will be the Governor General, the first African of that matter to be representing the interests of the Queen in Nigeria. Are you with me? Very well. So, Nigeria Independent Act, Independent Constitution. Okay? The next one. Which of the following is the right assume of citizenship? Right to education, to vote, to privacy, to property. The answer is what? To vote. Political right. If you are not a Nigerian citizen, you are not allowed to vote. You must be a Nigerian citizen. Alright? Every other people living in Nigeria have their privacy, have their property, have education. But to vote, political right, is for citizenship alone. Option B is good to go. And the answer. In the parliamentary system of government, the executive branch is under judiciary, legislative, popular vote, legislative branch. Is combined. I just explained that now. That's what I call fusion of power. Fusion of power. Instead of separation, this opposite of separation of power between legislature and executive. So they under the control of the legislative branch. Right? The Prime Minister, who is head of the executive, like I told you, is a member of the legislature and all his ministers. And that is why under this system of government, parliamentary system of government, this system, there's what we call parliamentary supremacy. The parliament is supreme over and above. So they can declare vote of no confidence on the executive, on the government, and they remove the Prime Minister and his executive. Okay? I did a deep study, an explanation on this in one of my videos on the system and the types of government. Please check it out and you'll get yourself enriched on this area. The main attribute of a state are, what do I attribute? Attribute means the characteristics or features of a state. What is a state? A geographical entity, a geographical area. Okay, but for you to be called a state, it must have population, it must have an area, a defined territory. It must have a government that controls the affairs of the state, and of course it must have sovereignty. Sovereignty is the power of a state to control its own state without fear of external interference. So these four must be available. Population, people, area, the territory itself. And of course government to manage the people and the sovereignty of the state. Option B is absolutely the most correct answer. B. A disadvantage of one-party state system is that emphasize political differences, no, accountability difficult, negate freedom of association, delay decision. The option C is the most correct answer. And that is why many of us are not comfortable with the present arrangement in Nigeria, where the ruling government, APC, is trying to cow and suppress the existence and influence of all other political parties, particularly the major opposition like PDP, Labour, and the newly introduced ADC. Okay, you can see that many of the governors in PDP and senators and House of Rep members, local government, they are all decamping from PDP to APC. So we're more or less going towards a one-party system. And a one-party system is not going to lead to dictatorship. It negates freedom of association. People should have choices. Democracy promotes choices. Choices of whether I want this party or the other party. Not trying to suppress them. So that is not too good for democracy. As long as this is happening, we are killing the spirit of democracy. And we're moving towards a dictatorship, an authoritarian system of government. Okay? In the history of Nigeria, 1914 what's the significance of 1914 Nigeria? In 1914, that's when we had the amalgamation of the Northern Protectorates and the Southern Protectorate, Lagos Colony. Okay? The North was merged with the South. And when the amalgamation took place, who did that? It was Lord Frederick Lugard, who was the Governor General at that time. And immediately that was done, Flora Shaw, a lady journalist then, said that, oh, this new created entity should be called Nigeria. And that name was designed from River Niger. River Niger, that means Niger area. Okay, that was Flora Shaw that gave that name after the amalgamation. So to amalgamation, that was Lord Regard. Option C is the most correct answer. Okay. The next one, which of these rules has resisted colonial rule and was exported to Calabar for King Jaja for Pogo? You cannot forget that in a hurry. Huh? King Okosoko was before Dusumu or after them, but Dusumu was one that was here, but was already in Lagos when the British colonial master came. They easily submit to them through their son officer that time. I think it was Freeman. Yes, I think it was Freeman that time. And then they took over Lagos, and Lagos became their colony between 1861 and 1862. Okay? The next one. How many states were created in 1967? You know, that was the first creation of states in the history of Nigeria, 1967. Okay? And one into that creation of states, and there were issues under the military government, issues between Ojukwu, okay, and Yakubu Gowon. Alright? Gowon is still alive, Ojukwu is late. On who is to be the head of state? The counter-coup boys that planned the coup in 1966. You know, the first coup in Nigeria was 1966. First coup, 66. That was in January. Alright? It was assumed or alleged to be planned by Igbo boys. So called the Igbo coup. So 6 months later, by July, there was a counter coup. A counter coup. You know, counter just like counter attack in football match. It's just like a revenge coup. That was also planned by Hausa boys. Okay, where they killed the first head of state, JT Yaguin Rose, and then they installed Yakubu Gowon as head of state. But Ojukwu disagreed because he believed that in hierarchy, is Senior Gowon in the military. He should be the one to rule, or what Yoruba man call Ogosikwe. Now, if that one is not willing to really want to rule, not his Jew rule over him, and that led to a serious disagreement between them. Until when the then Ghanaian head of state, J.N. Ankara, General Military head of state to J.N. Ankara, invited them to a village in Ghana called Aburi. And that Aburi, there was an agreement called Aburi Accord. What was Aburi Accord? The agreement between Yakubu Gowon, Ojukwu, and J.N. Ankara, that for peace to reign in Nigeria, for Yakubu Gowon to control the state, Nigeria should change from federal system of government to what? To confederal system. That was Aburi Accord, as proposed by Ojukwu. Gowon signed and agreed. Ankara witnessed it in Ghana. But when they got back to Nigeria, Gowon refused to implement the accord and decided to what? To break Nigeria into states. Remember, at that time, we had 4 regions: Northern region, Western region, Eastern region, Mid-Western region. That's what we call Niger Delta today. Okay, this is what you had. I remember at that time. So, Gowon was advised when he came back to Nigeria that if he went ahead with this accord and turned Nigeria to a confederal state, it will make it much more easier for Ojukwu to break away with Eastern region. And that's why he now decided to create 12 states. Broke Nigeria to 12 states from 4 regions. So that it's not easy for any of these regions to be taken away by anyone. During this, 3 days later, Ojukwu declared state of Biafra. That was 1967. And that's the way to Nigerian Civil War. You want to hear about Nigerian Civil War? Join me in one of our videos later. Okay? Very well. So, 12 states, 1967. From 4 regions to 12 states. I hope you're getting value for your time and for your data. Please subscribe to the channel and also share the link with your friends so that they can also learn and gain value as well. A major function of warrant chiefs was to, who are warrant chiefs? You call them warrant chiefs or warrant officers. When the colonial master came to rule Nigeria, we had centralized and decentralized system existing before he came. Centralized is when you have single person at the center, ruling the people, guiding the people. Decentralized is council, group of persons. Alright? Hausa and Yorubas, they were classified in this place, while the Igbos are decentralized. The Igbos. Why it was easy for the emir, the colonial master, to use the emir to rule the Hausa Fulani and to use the Alafin, the Oba, to rule the Yorubas. There was no single person. Igbo had no king. Okay, rather they have council of elders led by Opera. Opera is the most senior son that led the council. So an officer was appointed called warrant officer or warrant chief. Warrant officer or warrant chief. Okay, so this officer was what they used as a contact to reach out to the people in the eastern region. So it was to take charge of local administration. Okay, so option C is the most correct answer. Okay. The next question. A state that is ruled by an elected citizen is elected citizen. That is a republic. Elected. Look at the word republic. Look at me. Republic. When we say republic, what does it mean? Rep. Public. Which means representative of the people. Public means the people. Okay? So republic means representative of the people. So when some people are elected to rule the people, there is a republic. So Nigeria is a republic. They call it Federal Republic of Nigeria. Okay? Very well. The next question. The first Governor General of Nigeria was, I just mentioned this earlier, Lord Lugard. So assuming the question is framed, and the question is stated as, okay, let me do this way. Who was the first Governor General of Nigeria? Huh? Who was the first African Governor General of Nigeria? Who was the last Governor General of Nigeria? Okay? Then who was the last Colonial Governor General of Nigeria? These are all nomenclatures. They are all nomenclatures. Right? Adjective to qualify. First Governor General was who? Lord Frederick Lugard. First African to be a Governor General was who? Nnamdi Azikiwe. The last Governor General was James Robinson. Alright? The last Colonial Governor, okay, the last Governor General was Nnamdi Azikiwe. Okay? The last Colonial General, the last Governor General was Nnamdi Azikiwe. Okay? While the last Colonial Governor General was James Robinson. Colonial and white. Do you get that? First Governor General, Lord Frederick Lugard. First African Governor General, Nnamdi Azikiwe. Last Governor, it was the last Governor General we had. Right? Nnamdi Azikiwe. The last Colonial. The last Colonial before the first African. Do you understand that? Very well. James Robinson. So the correct answer to this question, the first Governor General of Nigeria, was Lord Frederick Lugard. The main role of pressure group is to what did they do? To influence the legislature to make decisions favorable to them. Option A. And that's another name for pressure group is what? The interest group. They fight for the interests of their group or of their members. Okay? Some call them to be selfish. But that is too derogatory to use that language. You better use the word interest group. They fight for their own interest. Option A is the most correct answer. The next question. OAU was formed in 1963. I think it was May 1963 at Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Right? By 32 African countries. Huh? Signed the Treaty of Formation of OAU. And remember, OAU is no longer existing. What we have now is AU. From 2002 July, we have now what? AU, African Union. Okay? Very well. The next one. In a democracy system, what happened? You must have had the ideology, majority carry the votes. So when you talk about democracy, minority may have their say, the majority have their way. So it's majority rule. Why? All decisions are based on majority votes, particularly in the National Assembly. Among the representatives, all decisions are based on what? Majority votes. So option A is the correct answer. That type of sovereignty that tries on legitimacy is external sovereignty, vested on any form of government, legal sovereignty within the people's mandate. It is the sovereignty that's within the people's mandate. Remember I mentioned sovereignty earlier. What is sovereignty? the absolute power of the state. Absolute power of the state to control itself without fear of external interference. All right? But this power does not belong to the government. It's invested by the people into the government. And that's what made the government to have what? Legitimacy. The government are existing based on the mandate, the legitimacy of the people. Are you with me? So within the people's mandate. That's within the people's support, within the people's legitimacy. Okay, option D is the correct answer. The right of a citizen to seek redress means, the word redress means fair hearing. Yes, something has been done to you and you needed to what? To have freedom to express yourself, to make a complaint, to talk about what happened, to seek redress. Fair hearing. The answer is fair hearing. That is option A. Okay, fair hearing. An order compelling a lower court or public operation to perform in accordance with the state is called mandamus, writ, ombudsman. No, the answer is writ of mandamus. Ombudsman means Public Complaint Commission, PCC, where you go to complain when any government officials has done you wrong. We call it ombudsman or PCC. So the answer to this question is writ of mandamus, an order from the court compelling either a lower court or government establishment to perform a particular function or carry out a particular duty. Writ of mandamus. Option A is the correct answer. The next one, a form of government which has a slogan to be ruling by the best. The word best means the noble, the best, the noble, the popular. Huh? And you can see here it's aristocracy. In one of my videos, we discuss all this. All these are what they call types of oligarchy. Types of oligarchy. What's oligarchy? A system of government where few people are ruling, few powerful people are ruling. Huh? Few. Only democracy is not part. Now, these three, B, C, D, are oligarchy. When we say plutocracy, Pluto means rich people. Another name for plutocracy is timocracy. Okay? So Pluto and Timo, they are the same thing. Aristocracy is when the best people, the noble, popular people, social people, famous people are ruling. We call it aristocracy. Not the way you use it in the negative form, girls. Aristocracy means best, noble, popular people are ruling. We have other one called ochlocracy. Ochlocracy, that's not here now. That's where poor people are ruling. Second, poor, yes. Then we also have theocracy, where priests, religious people are ruling. Okay, then we also call gerontocracy. Geronto, old people ruling. Like we have in Nigeria today, old people ruling. Gerontocracy. So the correct answer to this question is option B, aristocracy. Okay? Let's see the next question. The political party serves as platform upon which the rights and liberty of people can be attained, group aggregation interests of all in state, platform rebelling against the law of interest of citizen. I think the group aggregating the interest of all in the state, option B, is the most correct answer. You know, political party, what they do is to aggregate interest aggregation, interest aggregation, collection, putting total interest of the people together and use as a basis to contest for election. Even pressure group does the same thing, but this not for all the people when it comes to pressure group, but for their members. All right. So political party option B is correct. The next question: argumentation, negotiation, deliberation on the subject matter of a bill begins at. Okay. Now you know that we are under legislature. We have what they call the process of passing a bill. The process of passing a bill. What is a bill? A bill is a proposed law. A proposed law that after passing through certain stages or processes and signed by the president, it becomes law. A bill is a proposed law that needs to pass through certain stages or processes and signed by the president, then it becomes what? Law. So if you have gone through a class of legislature, you must have had what they call process of passing a bill. We have the first stage or first reading, stage of reading. We have the second stage of reading. We have the committee stage of reading. We have the report stage of reading, and then we have test stage of reading. And after all these stages in the National Assembly, the bill will be sent to the President for what they call assent. Are you with me? The first stage is just introductory stage. A bill is introduced to the House. No serious discussion is done on that. Share among the members of the House, go and study it. By the second stage, there will be a voting, there will be arguments, there will be negotiation, there will be deliberation at the second stage to decide whether this bill should be discussed or not. So there will be a voting on this bill for and against. If many people support the bill, then the bill will go to a committee will be set up to what? Discuss the bill. But if many against the bill will die, temporary death at that point. It may be represented another time, but for that moment, the bill is dead. Okay, so that's why we normally say the most critical stage of any bill is the second reading. But that second reading determines the lifespan of the bill, to live or to die. All right? Very well. So let's see the next question. A cabinet reshuffle takes place only when the motion of no confidence passed, when solution is heard, when progression and collective responsibility are their way, when the shadow cabinet fails in Senate, when only when a motion of no confidence is passed. Remember, I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the difference between presidential system and parliamentary system. While in a presidential system, you remove the head of executive, Mr. President, through impeachment. The National Assembly can impeach him for constitutional offenses. But the head of executive in a parliamentary system of government was Prime Minister. You remove a Prime Minister with vote of no confidence by the Parliament. Are you with me? Very well. When there's vote of no confidence, the Prime Minister and all his ministers are gone. They are gone. They are removed. And the shadow government will now be formed. A new government will be formed. Only when the motion of no confidence is passed. Option A is the correct answer. The next question. The area from which one or more members or representatives are elected in public office is called electoral constituency. When we say electoral college is a group of people chosen by the electorates. Who are the electorates? Voters. To, on their behalf, votes for the final representative. So electoral college is practiced in indirect election, when the people choose a group of people, maybe a group of local government councillors or local government chairmen, to go ahead to vote on their behalf for the final representative, particularly members of the parliament. All right? This is more common under parliamentary system of government. Okay. Electoral constituency is a special area created for the purpose of electoral representation. So when an election is coming, the state will be divided to constituency. For instance, the Lagos state is divided to three constituencies. I think we have Lagos Central, we have Lagos East, and Lagos West. Three constituencies. It was from that constituency we have senators. Senators emerge to represent the interests of the people in those areas. So that's what the question is saying. Electoral ward. A ward is a unit of the constituency. A ward is a unit of, in every local government we have wards everywhere. Ward is a unit of the constituency. Electoral district is also electoral constituency. Alright? So the area where one or more members represent the interests of the people is the electoral constituency. Okay. Now, this question is going to be our last question for the day. Alright? Let's see. Okay? Yes. So our last question for the day. Alright? The Inspector General of Police is appointed by the executive. Who is the executive? Mr. President. On the advice of who? Nigerian Police Council, Police Service Commission, House of Representatives, Senate Rep, on the advice of Police Service Commission. When he appoints him finish, he will now submit his name to the National Assembly for approval. Are you with me? With this, we have come to the end of this session. I hope you have gained value, absolutely, right? Please subscribe to this channel, Share the link with your friends so they can also learn, particularly at this time that you are preparing to register for your JAMB. Thank you for your time and see you another time.
Hi, I'm sure you enjoyed the content you just watched. To see more episodes as that, preparing you for your oncoming exams, smash the subscribe button on this channel right now and visit the playlist that we've made for you, covering over 50 types of different exams.